Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. I am your host, Alex Williams, and I'm delighted to be here with two wonderful, delightful people. We've got Nic Laporte, as usual. Say hi, Nic.
Hello and welcome back, everybody.
And we've got a special guest, a very special guest, Kyler Smith. Welcome onto the podcast.
Hello.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your channel, how you came to urbanism. Just a quick Coles Notes, couple minutes before we get on with things.
Yeah, so I'm Kyler. I have a YouTube channel called ERYNGO Urbanism. I became an urbanist slowly over time, but as a small child, I was obsessed with trains. And then I went to college to study architecture at OU. And then in doing so, through COVID, I ended up at an internship with the OU Institute for Quality Communities, which is an organization at OU that kind of works with small towns throughout the state to kind of improve their urban fabric, doing like little pop-up projects and that kind of thing. So I did a project with them that kind of got me thinking about cities in a different way. And then I went to study abroad in Rome. And then as I was there, I was kind of watching Not Just Bikes videos, and I was kind of like recording little clips here and there, thinking like, oh, at some point, like maybe I'll use these for something. And then when I got back home to Oklahoma, I watched another Not Just Bikes video, and I was like, this is just making me sad. I have to turn this off because like he's talking about like, oh, all these wonderful things that I don't have access to anymore. And I'm like, I think we need somebody who's kind of talking about this stuff from a different perspective, from the perspective of what could be rather than what currently is. So that's kind of what angle I try to take with my videos in terms of looking at actual like precedent and design solutions that exist in this world that we can take and we can use in our cities that need help.
Yeah, I love that, and I can't wait to get into more of that with you later on in the show, especially getting more of the perspective of an urbanist in Oklahoma City, because I think that's something we haven't had on the show before, and so I really look forward to hearing more about another city and some of the cool things maybe that are happening down there. Nic, do you have any updates?
We do have an update. It's coming from New York City. This is actually coming from just across the water there in New Jersey. Governor Murphy asks Trump to help on congestion pricing. So this was kind of expected to see that once Trump came into office, we'd have some kind of pushback to congestion pricing. We've seen the preliminary results of congestion pricing in Manhattan. It's been a success for the most part. But like we said in the past, we need to see the long-term results of this. And whether or not this is something that Trump is going to interfere with, I know he's made mention of, wanting to stop it. I think it'll be a good example, at least if it sticks around for at least another, 4 or 5 months to see the results if it does get stopped and how that's going to affect the traffic changes within the city. That'd be a great to just at least see how that works. Because some people have said like this isn't going to work, or at least that this isn't the same as what they've done in London, for example, where it's been a great success. So at least we could get that much for it. That's like the silver lining that I'm looking forward to if this does get canceled. Hopefully we can collect some data from that to see whether or not it is working. I mean, the people on the ground are saying it's working. So, but we'll see. That's just anecdotes for the time being.
Yeah. Good planning requires good data. So I think that will be really, really interesting to see. On that note, on the note of other cities, one of our Patreon subscribers, Austin, is in San Francisco right now, and he says in the live chat here, which you can join if you go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. He says in the live chat, he says, rode the bike share Bay Wheels over the Golden Gate Bridge. He says, top tip, if you unlock an e-bike at a dock that only has e-bikes, you have the option to have minor assistance for no additional cost or full assistance for full cost. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little bit of, as they say in economics, price discrimination. If you are in a certain situation, you walk up to the e-bikes or the bike dock, and there are only e-bikes available, but you were looking for something a little bit cheaper, then you can still get it at that lower cost, but only with minor assistance. Or if you're like, you know what, fine, I'll go full e-bike on this one, and then you get the full
You might
cost,
want to in
full
some
assistance.
situations. Like, I
I
didn't know
think
that. That's
so.
pretty cool. Like when I was
Yeah.
there last time, I used Bay Wheels the whole time. That's not true. I rented an e-bike for one day, which was very expensive. It was $100 USD for 24 hours, which, I mean, was amazing. It was so much fun, especially helped with the crazy hills like on Steiner. Like the house where Mrs. Doubtfire lives, going up that hill is just insane. Even with the e-bike on full throttle, it took me some effort to get up that hill.
Yeah.
But that is cool that they have that option for you if you wanted it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it seemed like that'd be pretty rare that you'd end up at a station where the only bikes available are e-bikes.
Yeah, I don't know how rare that is. I mean, it sounds like because they're kind of losing a little bit on that deal, that they probably try to make sure that there's a good distribution of everything. That said, if I'm in San Francisco, I'm going for the e-bike. I'm not riding an acoustic bike in that situation. What about you? What do you think, Kyler? Are you a big e-bike fan or bike share fan?
I would be. I live in a walk-up apartment, so I have a normal bike that I can actually like hoist and carry up the stairs. But yeah, no, I like e-bikes. I think they're great for micromobility.
There's sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, you're good. I think Oklahoma City recently defunded its bike share program, which I think kind of sucks.
Yeah, that super sucks.
They did have one for a while.
And was it like OKC branded, or was it like Neuron or Lime or something like that?
It was called Spokies. I think it was a Oklahoma City specific. It was run by the transit agency here in town. So
that's usually the best way to go about it. Like I like it when that's the case. Mm-hmm. You know, when Lime comes in, like for example in Seattle, it's all Lime and Bird, and I think there's another company, but it's all private organizations, right? And I find that that's where the economics don't work out when it's not a service anymore. They're looking for profit, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah. We do have the scooters around here too, especially on like the OU campus.
Right. But. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of, those are the situations where you tend to see the most of those dockless bike shares and micromobility options is, you know, around universities or around downtown areas, touristy areas, you know, sports centers, things like that. And I think I'm interested to look at how Oklahoma City did their bike share program integrated with the transit authority, because that I think if you were to ask me right off the bat, I think that's the best way to go about it, because transportation as a service is always going to either have to be very, very expensive for the user or require subsidies, right? Mm-hmm. We see that with every mode of transportation that we use. Our cars require subsidies. Our bikes require subsidies. Our bike shares require subsidies. Our transit requires subsidies, right? Like all of these transportation as a service options require subsidies, unless, of course, you are paying for like full price for like a taxi or something like that. But even then, the roads are subsidized, so you know,
it's still a car.
Exactly, right? Like, so I think that's an interesting conversation to be had. So I'll have to look more into that. But alas, let's get on with the show. Nick, I know you've got a story for us. You are true and faithful. Always come prepared with a story for us.
We got something. Everybody's seen it. Everybody knows what's going on, right? The new president, new old president. What would you call him? Anyway, Trump's back in office, right? He had his address, which was quite the watch. It was very interesting to see and very telling to see the kind of people who were there behind him, especially some, maybe is it too hyperbolic to say oligarchs who were hanging around? I don't know. That seems pretty accurate. But anyway, he touched on many things that he basically signed and ready to go on day one. And a few of them that we need to touch on here that are going to apply mostly to urbanism. Two big ones for sure. And the first one is to end the Green New Deal. So drill, baby, drill, as he said, ramping up fossil fuel production, increasing the reliance on cars in general. So just a week ago, we saw the last act of Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg and U.S. Department of Transportation announcing nearly $5 billion in competitive grants, which is supposed to finance the planning and construction of more than 500 transportation projects in all states and DC and some territories as well, which is amazing. It's huge. It's one of those last ditch things where you kind of send out when you're leaving office, which was fantastic. But this is the kind of things we're going to see stopped in general. And all that money, I suspect, is going to be funneled towards highway projects, or at least given to the state DOTs. And we know how that goes in a lot of states, unfortunately, is to expand highways, which is unfortunate. But that's kind of the whole plan right now, is around cars, right? With Donald Trump, it seems very clear that he's funded by oil. He's got Elon Musk behind him, which I think kind of might be having to do with the next thing, which is to end or at least revoke the electrical vehicle mandate. So this is a change that is supposed to give more leeway to the traditional automakers like GM in their transition. That's what they say. But really, this is going to give more leeway for them to keep selling gas-powered cars and end the switch, or at least slow down the switch towards electric vehicles as a whole in the United States. So this is obviously going to slow down just our move that we're already in the direction of when it comes to fighting gas emissions, when we're talking about greenhouse gases and climate change, which is unfortunate. But he's also ended the distribution of funds for EV chargers. And also, he hasn't been signed yet, but has signaled that he will seek to cancel tax credits of up to $7,500 for people who want to buy new EVs. And like, we know there's it's a fishy thing to begin with, like giving subsidies to electric cars in general. But what we saw from the vice president many months ago was that he wanted to basically give that straight to trucks and SUVs that use gas, which is just mind-blowingly insane. So that's not great, not a good start. Any comments on those main topics right there, guys?
Well, I want to hear from Kyler on this one because you actually
he's a resident
live
American
in the US.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a U.S. resident in a red state, especially, if our DOT gets any money, obviously it's just going to go to highway construction. I do kind of find it weird that Musk is so gung-ho about ending the EV subsidies. I guess that's maybe to prevent like his competitors, I suppose.
That's what I think, yeah.
I imagine some of that at least goes to him, but he's the guy who came up with Hyperloop to try to kill California high-speed rail. So,
right,
yeah,
right, yeah, and like a lot of these things, high-speed rail is starting to kind of become a thing in North America, Anglo-North America. Like we're kind of moving in that direction. There are more conversations about it happening in Ontario. And in Alberta, our provincial government is actively working on a master plan, which will potentially include plans for at least one high-speed rail connection. And then Texas, of course, as well. And so a lot of these things I see a little bit as inevitable, right? Like these are good ways to get people around, and we don't need to politicize these things. We don't need to turn trains and bikes and EVs and whatever into a culture war, right? What we should be thinking about is like, okay, well, people want to get around. What are the best ways that we can facilitate that movement of people and goods, whether it's for their professional life or their personal life? And so I don't know, when this sort of thing happens, I know like a lot of people in the profession, like in the industry, people who work for Ford and Chevy and whatever else, they're already moving towards EVs and saying that we're going in that direction anyways. And so for them, I imagine it's a little bit frustrating that the government's like, actually, and we're going to end these programs. And they're thinking, but the market is going that way. Why would you, right? Why are you trying to fight against what consumers are already saying that they're wanting?
I would say even people in like the energy industry are probably, like Oklahoma is, only as populated as it is because of oil and gas. And even both Tulsa and Oklahoma City for years have been talking about needing to move our economy away from that and more into renewable type energy. Even, here in a very deep red state. So it'll be interesting to see how much of the momentum that's been built up in that direction will continue despite what's going on in government right now. Especially like the Biden era, like big spending packages of like the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act and like all the stuff that Pete Buttigieg has been doling out to rail projects. Like, surely those things have built up a little bit of momentum that will be hard to stop, or harder to stop than, would have otherwise been. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy to see the whole rhetoric around everything in politics right now, and especially when it comes to the kind of urban movement that we're in here, is how much, like you said, it's politicized. It's kind of wild. And I keep thinking about how to change the rhetoric locally, or even people who aren't really into it. It's really crazy to see. Like, I was talking to my brother just the other day, and we had this disagreement about just the state of things in Canada, and we were talking about our, what would you call him, incumbent, or at least incoming prime minister, likely is going to be a conservative, Pierre Poilievre. And my brother is, relatively left-leaning person. He's an intelligent, and I would say rational person, but he said to me, he's like, we need change. We need to do something different. It's like, you're going to vote for the conservatives. He's like, well, yeah, look how much I'm spending on gas. And it's one of those things people get so hung up on, the price of gas. And I said, bro, like, you're talking about saving, even just say it's cutting the carbon tax, a thing that if you're paying into and you're a regular person in Canada, you're getting back more than what you're paying to it already. But just say that's not the case. You're willing to sell your fucking country for what it amounts to $100 to $400 a year. Like, that's the difference. If you dropped the gas prices by like 20%, it's not that much.
Do you know what? I just want to say it's not that much to you.
That's fine.
I think there are a lot of people, right? Like, and there are a lot of
Yeah.
ways that we can, make changes that actually impact people. But I think that's kind of what it comes down to, is that people are frustrated. People feel like they're being nickel and dimed at every turn. And so people end up going for whatever is going to be different, because I'm pissed at the status quo.
Absolutely.
Right.
I said that to him too. I said, I understand. Like, you're not in a position, like, he lives in a small town in Ontario. He doesn't live, near downtown Vancouver like I do. I have options. I can get on the train. I can get on my bicycle and get everything I need. I can walk to the grocery store. He doesn't have that option, and I understand that. But I think the big thing is people don't look at the big picture. And maybe this is very myopic in the way that we're talking about it here. Obviously, we're steeped in this stuff. I listen to podcasts every day. I read books about this stuff every day. Like, I'm totally deep into it. But like, we have to understand, like, that we're just digging a hole deeper and deeper every day. If you're like, hey, I want to have a little bit of money now in the next few years with this government, even if all of those things that's going to happen as a result of that is we're digging a hole deeper for the future generations to further require a car or live in a way that's more expensive than they could otherwise. Like, it's doing the things that our predecessors have done to put us in the situation we're in now. Like, we're not doing the hard work. Nobody's willing to make sacrifices. And that's the thing that kind of pisses me off. Yeah.
I mean, like, if you're so ingrained in, I mean, a lot of it does come back to car brain with the gas price thing. If you feel like there's no other way to get around, which, like, here in Oklahoma City, there's your options are a car that takes 20 minutes or a bus that takes an hour and a half. Nobody's going to pick the bus that takes an hour and a half
if they can afford it. Yeah,
they
absolutely.
absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am in favor of, cars costing more, because they're, currently gas is highly subsidized. And, if you stop doing that and people start actually having to pay the actual price, then, more people are going to choose other options, or at least more people are going to like say, hey, we need other options. Like, because I don't think that there's enough people saying that right now.
I don't think people really understand the power of other options. People haven't experienced it. Like I'm talking about my brother who has lived in either small towns or London, Ontario, like, which, at least for people online in the urbanist circle is considered a pretty shitty urbanist place, right? Made famous by Jason of Not Just Bikes. And you can see that, like, when you haven't actually been somewhere, even for a day, that has these things figured out, like, how do you even like conceptualize a world where you don't need your car? And I think that's the thing we need to do. And it's something I would love to do. Like I'm going to the Netherlands again this summer, and I was begging my dad to come with me. And he's like, I can't make it work. I mean, two of his kids, my siblings, are having weddings this year, and I understood that. But I'm like, I'm going to get my dad to fucking go to the Netherlands, and I'm going to take him around. I want him to see first person, because he's like the most right-wing person I have in my life. Like, I can't even share what he said to me today. It's maybe for after the show. It's holy. He's a big Trump supporter. It's pretty tough. But anyway, what I was saying about this whole gas tax thing and the carbon tax, especially, it's just crazy to see the rhetoric between that and what's going on Ontario right now. Is Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario, just gave a $200 rebate to consider people who live there, which is like, isn't that basically the exact same thing? Like, functionally, it's the same thing. You're taking tax and you're giving it back to the people. It's wealth distribution at the end of the day. And let's say it's right before an election that he just called. It's a little suspicious. Anyway, sorry, a little ranty here.
No, you're right. I mean, it's the buying election thing lately has been kind of interesting, because I think it might have been New Brunswick. It was one of the maritime provinces where there was some sort of like, hey, and we'll give everybody a little bit of a boost, right? And then same thing, like we got this GST holiday, and where, I don't know, some things had their sales tax taken off of them, and so it's kind of this ongoing theme of like, please, please, please let me keep this job.
Yeah.
Which has been interesting to see. But on the topic of urbanism, it is incredibly frustrating when things like this become politicized, because you go to the Netherlands and it's so effortless, like driving there, biking there, walking there, just living there, transit there. It is so effortless, even compared to other European countries, right? Like I've also been to Belgium and Germany and Austria, and uh, and they have nothing. They have nothing on the Netherlands. Like the way that they have done it is just better bar none. Even though, like, also transit in London and Wales. I took trains all around the UK, but it is just nothing compared to the ease of getting around and the options that you have for getting around in the Netherlands, right? Like, no matter what mode you choose, even if it's cars, right? Like, even if you want to get around by car, getting around by car in the Netherlands is so much more comfortable.
It's so good
than anywhere else I have ever been. And so, yeah, it doesn't need to be politicized. It doesn't need to be, this side or that side. It's just like, give us options, give us multiple ways that we can get around our cities. And I think, interestingly, you'll find that it's significantly more fiscally responsible to do that, right?
That's what I wanted to say. Like, the strong towns approach is that fiscally conservative angle that I think a lot of people can get behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
One thing that is interesting to note, that, I mean, I do think in the urbanist sphere, there is like we don't want this to be too political. However, in order to actually like implement anything, it is politics.
Yeah.
Which I think the thing is, like, we don't want it to be partisan when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that really doesn't need to be partisan that has become that.
Yes.
So we have to be very cautious on how we talk about it. I get comments sometimes on my videos that, like, why are you talking about politics? It's like, well, you must not be paying attention. This is all politics.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
it's,
It's
it
I mean,
is
hard.
what it is.
and our elected leaders are the people who make those decisions, right? I mean,
Yep.
I'm running for office. I'm running to be a city councilor here in Calgary, and it's like like there is a problem with how we have built our city over the last 60 years and more, and there are people who have made those decisions, and those people who made those decisions tend to be politicians. They're the thumbs up, thumbs down on these decisions. And so, yeah, I think this is something really important for us to talk about. So, I do we want to get into some questions?
No,
We can.
I gotta round this whole thing out and
You
why I
okay?
even brought it up in the
Round
first
us out.
place.
Yeah.
First off, when talking about strong towns, I have to mention Ben Durham actually did a video. Friend of the show, Ben Durham, just did a video for Strong Towns. It was released last week. It's fantastic. If you never watched Strong Towns videos, go check them out. There's so many. Again, who's the guy who used to be their main video producer? I can't remember his name. It's lost on me. He's left.
He was good.
He was really good. He made a bunch of great videos. Also, Rachel Leonardo is basically now their main person doing their videos.
And she's also very good.
Very, very good. I'm so happy that she got that position. Her channel's so underrated. But yeah, this one is again from our friend Ben Durham, friend of the show, and it's about St. Thomas, and it's a small town outside of London, Ontario, and it's about the expansion that's going on there with the VW plant. And also, I think he talks about the Amazon plant a little bit as well that also opened up recently. But it's very good, very, very well done. It's very impressive. There he is. But yeah, so how I wanted to round this out, and the reason why I brought it up in the first place wasn't just to, kind of commiserate a bit about the situation in the United States and the pending situation here in Canada, but it's to talk about the thing we always talk about. Where is the power held when we talk about urbanism? It's local, right? Municipal. That's where the fight is. And if you want to make changes, and this sucks, it's going to affect those fights. But at the end of the day, you can still make change. You can go out and talk to people in your community. You can go to City Hall. You can run for city council like our very own Alex Williams here, and you can make a change. So don't get discouraged. Take this fight, because this is when the stuff really consolidates and things happen. Like it's happened in Vancouver. We got a conservative council here in Vancouver now for 2 years. What happened? He started ripping out bike lanes in the city. And you know what he did? He ignited critical mass, something that had been dead for almost a decade in Vancouver. And now it happens every month in the city. And he reinvigorated that push for safe infrastructure in the city. So, there's the silver lining. This is going to ignite people to fight back, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, talk to the people who are running these organizations. Talk to whoever's running the local transit authority or agency. Talk to the people, the engineers at the city. Talk to them. Ask them about their experience, what it's like doing their job, and ask them, what are some of the improvements that you're working to make? Get involved in city engagements. In any way that you can, because it is local. And federal politics, regardless of what is happening at a federal level, you can make a huge difference and huge strides on the local level.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good discussion. We want to get into some questions for Kyler here. If you are in the live chat, which I know we've got Austin, Skitch, and Jen, as usual, joining us in the live chat. Again, if you want to join the live chat, you can go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. And for as little as $1 a month, you can join us live Wednesday afternoons, evenings, depending on your time zone. And
I got one question to start off,
us
I
off.
think, for Kyler, and it's about branding. So first of all, the name, where did that come from? And also, pink. You got it right now. You're wearing it. Tell us about it.
This actually, it goes back to when I was in Boy Scouts, but the name, it comes from, we always envisioned a big evil mega conglomerate called E Corp that controls a bunch of different things. And so that has been one of the things that I've been trying to create. Yes. Anyways, the pink has been a part of that as well, part of the branding. And also, it's memorable. it's a weird enough word. ERYNGO is a type of like flower that's kind of like a pink spiky flower. And it's a weird enough word that, you know, you don't really associate it with anything. So it's something I can build my own brand with.
I
So
love it.
Yeah, I
That's
love
cool.
that. Yeah, that is super cool. And then you did talk to us a little bit about how you got into urbanism, but what was the thing that you were like, "Oh, I have to start my own urbanism channel. Like I have to talk and post about this stuff."
yeah, I mean, it was a collection of things that all came together. I think it really was like watching that Not Just Bikes video and having to shut it off halfway through and just going like, nobody is talking about anything that really pertains to Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, cities like that are everywhere in the U.S. Like there's so many of them that, you know, there's just a lot of people who just live in the city, just drive around everywhere and don't think twice about it. And so, like, I've seen so many great things happen in Tulsa and Oklahoma City in terms of projects that are kind of like have kind of come together and like created really cool areas of town. Um, but and people go to those and they're like, this is cool. But it was hard for me to find parking. And, you know, anytime somebody proposes something that's not fully within their, like, you know, idea of what is possible here, then they'll just kind of say, oh, no, we can't do that here. Why, you know, what would make you think that we could do that here? That's nobody's going to go for that. When in reality, when I did my IQC project, which was like a tactical urbanist thing in an alleyway, uh, everybody who showed up, we surveyed people and like overwhelmingly positive reception. And we were like, wait, don't people hate this stuff? Like, don't people not enjoy when you take away? And, you know, there was like one guy who like was very intimidating, who owned the antique store and was like, I need to park my truck right here. And we were like, okay, well, we can move the barriers for you and you can park right there. That's fine. Um, but everybody else was like, this is awesome. We need more of this, like space for kids to play with chalk. So just seeing that reception and like, and that has continued since I started my channel, is like, so many people I talk to around here are like, yes, we need this. We need all this stuff. Uh, how do we do it? And that's kind of, I've been trying to coalesce some of that energy all into one place.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love that like when you talk to people about this stuff, they're like, that'd be amazing. I love that idea. You know,
yeah.
even some people who, you know, who I don't personally think, like I look at them and I make an assumption, or I know them personally already and I make an assumption about them. And then when I talk to them about it, they're like, that is such a cool idea. Why don't we
Mm-hmm.
do that? You
Yeah.
know, and there's a ton of projects like that in any city, things that would be like a quick win that everybody would be like, yeah, get me on board with that. So I think that's really fantastic. Are there, you know, I don't know if there are going to be any OKC listeners. I don't know if we have any already. We
Unlikely.
might, but if there are any people who are in the area who are looking to get involved, are there any organizations, any local groups that they can get involved with that you would send them to?
Yeah. In Tulsa, I know there's an organization. I, I have, this is like full discretion. I have no association with these people, but I've been recommended them. So I will
Mm-hmm.
pass on the recommendation of Tulsa Young Professionals. They have an urbanist like subgroup within there. Um,
Super cool.
a group of people I probably need to go interact with, but haven't yet. So if anybody from there is listening to this, then uh, hello. They're probably aware of what I'm doing, but I have not interacted with them. But also recently, I've been getting involved with Urban Land Institute (ULI),
Okay.
which is, you know, everywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, but here in Oklahoma City, that's where a lot of the kind of urbanists have been prior to me had been grouping up. So, professionals in the real estate industry, as well as like city planners, all kinds of, even just people who like riding their bike around town. Like, there's a good mix of different types of urbanists involved there.
That's fantastic. Yeah, yeah, there are always groups. Is because you're obviously out there doing things. Is there a good way for people to get involved with you and like the things that you are doing?
For that, probably just join my Discord server. I'll probably plug it again at the end, but the on any of my videos in the description, there's a link to get to it. But we've been building a little community there, quite a few local people as well as just everywhere. So
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Nick, do you want to take the next question for us?
I think this is from Jen, one
Yeah.
of our patrons. What lessons did you learn from the Stockyard City Crosswalk project that you apply to future interventions?
well, that for any listeners who are not aware, my most recent video that I've published is about a crosswalk that we painted in Stockyard City. It's got this really cool like cow skull design you can see that my fiance Katie came up with. But yeah, so we kind of did this a little bit rogue. um, it, I'm still trying to figure out if there's a way that you can actually get permission to do this kind of thing or some kind of a permit to do this the right way. So, like, somebody left a really good comment on the video that was like, please be cautious if somebody is injured here. It was like an engineer who commented this. If somebody gets injured here, they could sue me for that. And whether or not they have a case, they I could get pulled into some kind of a lawsuit just because it was not designed correctly or something or other. Got to pay for your medical bills somehow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Obviously, so I do want to recommend you go and like do tactical urbanism. I don't want to recommend that you put yourself at like huge risk of liability. So one of the things that we did was we used tempera paint, which we just bought jugs of it at like a school supply store,
Hmm.
and it was pretty like a good amount of temporary, but it stayed for a couple of weeks. So with cars driving on it.
Right.
The previous time I had done painting on the alleyway in Edmond, we used an interior latex paint, and it rained a lot afterwards. And by the time of the event a week later, it was
It was
like
gone.
partially gone. It was
Right.
like 50% gone. The other
Yeah.
like there's still like 5% of it today that is left, like 3 years later.
Right,
So,
right. But just little patches.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I have not yet nailed down the right type of paint to use.
Yeah.
But yeah, and another thing about the Stockyard City one, it looks like that would be a really busy street just based off of everything you see in the video.
Mhm.
It is not. That street has hardly any cars on it ever. So we like it, and even if you look at it on the map, you're like, this is surely a lot of people drive here. No, it's
Yeah.
just something about it. It definitely doesn't need to be those 4 lanes that it is. But yeah, be very cautious about what you're doing if you do anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the subject of liability is interesting, especially given that it's those engineers who tend to design the roads that we have. And in Calgary, 25 people died last year being hit by vehicles. Um, And yeah, and that's pedestrians, right? Like
Well,
I'm not
yeah.
talking about you know, car collisions. I'm talking about pedestrian getting hit by somebody driving a car.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about liability, you know, I think we do need to take the safety on our streets seriously. Um, yeah, yeah, that just made me think of that because it feels a little bit ironic.
Yeah, it
That's
definitely
exactly what I was
does.
going to say. It is ironic that this is the thing that they're harping on. But like that's what I was kind of curious about, and really why I wanted to talk to you. But by the way, if you want to see this video, it's I broke the law to improve my city. It's the latest video on.
I
I can't say the
I've
name.
been I've been
ERYNGO.
changing
You've been changing the
the
name.
title
Okay,
of the video around, so if it might not be called that,
the
but
latest video then on
it'll
ERYNGO
have
urbanism.
it'll have that crosswalk you with the giant cow skull.
It's so cool.
Um,
It's amazing. I love it because it's something that I've been thinking about for quite a while here in Vancouver, even because we have a lot of places where it seems to be engineered in a way that they don't want you to cross somewhere, even though you're legally have right of way if you're a pedestrian. So what is the case there in Oklahoma? Like, for example, on that intersection, if you wanted to cross the street before this crosswalk was there, is that considered like an unmarked crosswalk?
I think so. That I would need to look into that more.
Yeah, because that seems
I'm some
it,
I'm somebody who's just a proponent of jaywalking, like
okay.
in general.
Yeah.
Like even if it is technically illegal to cross there, I still say go for it. Just be careful. But I think there's like curb cuts and everything there already,
Mm-hmm.
and it's at an intersection, and
That's
there's a
yeah.
bus stop there. Like people are crossing there already.
Yeah, and I think people
Right.
don't even understand the whole idea of unmarked crosswalks. I've had stories about this. Drivers yelling at me while I'm trying to cross the street where there's no painted crosswalk and they're supposed to stop. I'm like, come on, guys. This is like one of the first things you should learn when you're getting your driver's license. But that's funny to think that, hey, you put down a crosswalk and you'd be liable for an injury in the case that somebody was crossing there. It seems kind of crazy.
Yeah, the only reason I bring that up is because that's like the only like cautious or like negative feedback I've gotten.
Right.
Everything else, everything from like people that work at the city, all these different people are just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, but I even told, so I kind of like, this was adjacent to a ULI project, although they don't fully want to take responsibility for it. Um, the I told them, hey, if anybody like comes to you guys with negative feedback or like anything negative, I want to hear about it so that I can know for future reference like what to do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see your next project. Speaking of projects, we were talking a little bit before the show about, you know, some different places in OKC that are maybe, you know, a little under the radar, but that people might be interested to check out. Is there anywhere in particular that you want to highlight as something good happening or something interesting or somewhere people should see?
yeah, so I mean, when Alex first kind of asked me this question, I was like, no, there's not anything to come and look at, like especially to travel here from Canada for. But there are some interesting things going on. So first, I would say is, especially for the urbanists, is the Wheeler District, which is the new urbanist neighborhood that's developing right across the river from downtown. A lot of new urbanist neighborhoods that I've seen are kind of like drive to kind of urbanism, and this one is too, but this one has the proximity to be walkable to downtown. Yeah, if you're watching, you can see it on the screen. The but this is an old airfield which has been purchased by some developers, and they're trying to create a walkable new urbanist neighborhood. And the next
Mm.
phase that's like under construction right now is what I'm pretty excited about. They're starting to incorporate multifamily housing and some more density even beyond what you see there. Because so far they've mostly focused on single family homes that are just more dense than what you would typically find in the city.
Right.
Larger homes on smaller lots.
Right. Right.
Especially there's a cross street through there that is just a fully pedestrian street, which, they're kind of pushing at the boundaries of what the fire department will allow and that kind of thing, which brings me joy. So it's a cool area. They do
Yeah.
little weekend farmers market events and things. And then another neighborhood that I'm excited about is the Plaza District, which is an older kind of like Main Street area, which has recently been kind of revitalized and it's starting to densify. This has been kind of a lower income area, but at the same time, with this, this is probably where the most gentrification is kind of going on in OKC, which is, I'm not excited about that. But what I am excited about is seeing how an existing neighborhood can change to become more walkable and more dense, and that kind of thing. One thing that it's probably kind of lacking right now is transit access. I think there's a bus that goes along 16th Street there, but it can't be more frequent than a half hour. I can't imagine. I haven't looked into that very much, but
Yeah.
that's an area where some of the same things are happening, but it's actually integrated into the city, as opposed to the Wheeler District, which is kind of an island right now.
Right. Right. Yeah, this is a little bit more in the middle of it, and I'm sure something like that will benefit the people living in the area around it.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's something that I kind of want to touch on maybe here for a second is this idea of gentrification and the displacement that can tend to come with it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if we allow our neighborhoods to integrate, incrementally evolve and develop and change over time, that makes it so that people can stay in their neighborhoods longer, right? Like if we allowed people to open a business from their home or supported people having, not just ADUs, but ACUs, right? Additional commercial units, right? Like things like that, coffee shops and change like that. If we allowed it to be slower, we wouldn't be displacing people like we are when we see a neighborhood and we're kind of like, well, things are kind of falling apart. Let's come in, let's tear everything up, let's buy everything up, and let's completely change the face of the neighborhood. Instead, we should be, supporting people in the neighborhood, changing the neighborhood, right? Changing and adapting the neighborhood to their needs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that is something that is really interesting about Oklahoma City and Oklahoma in general, is that there are a lot of these like smaller incremental developers actually working here. I was on a project a couple of months ago with a firm from Colorado, from like the Denver area, and one of the things they commented was like, "Oh, I was looking around at like some of the developments in your city, and I was intrigued to see that like people were actually going for these smaller type projects." Which they are. And I think that has partially come up from, like a couple of the people who have worked in the Wheeler District are expanding out into other areas. There's been some developments around the Plaza District that came from people who started working in the Wheeler District. And then even like up and around downtown Edmond, I think the city planners there have been making like incentivizing people to kind of do these small incremental developments around town. And there's been quite a few like really interesting projects that have been, developing up there. So yeah, it's interesting that there is an appetite for that very incremental style of development here, which I appreciate.
Yeah, yeah, and I was just kind of poking around the map a little bit more, and there are a lot of places where there clearly used to be some homes on a lot, and they're not there anymore. And so, yeah, to fight against the hollowing out of these neighborhoods, and then the displacement faced by the people who stay in the neighborhoods, we should be able to be constantly reinventing these spaces.
I've seen an argument against bike lanes because of gentrification. And I was like, guys, the solution's easy. Bike lanes everywhere. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think gentrification is a topic that I'd like to like dive into on one of my videos at some point, because it is like a really complex topic that,
Yeah.
you know, I've thought about, but I need to consult some experts and figure out exactly, you know, what all is at play there, because there's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's different city to city, right? Different cities.
It's definitely not as simple as like bike lanes cause gentrification.
No.
Like,
Oh, God. No.
No.
I just made a stupid joke. That's all.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
I agree with you.
we love your stupid jokes, Nick. Do we want to get on to the last few listener mail questions that
Sure.
or at least the one listener mail question from Jen here?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. This is again from Jen Hall. What is your favorite 100% car-free outdoor place you've been to? I think that's anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That is a good question.
My favorite car place, car-free place, car place.
Car-free outdoor place.
Outdoor place.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can't say the mall.
I'd say Sensoji Temple in Tokyo, Japan. I love that place. What a beautiful street. It's like you've seen it. You've definitely seen it. If you've seen images of Japan, it's really close to Tokyo Skytree. Big giant gate with a huge lantern hanging in it. And then behind that is a big, long pedestrian plaza where there's shops where you can buy snacks and, you know, trinkets and mementos and stuff like that. And at the very end is a full temple there where they have the incense and they have those little sticks you get out of the thing to read your fortune. And they have a pagoda, beautiful place. And just around the corner from there, there's a beautiful pedestrian street with bars and restaurants. It's in like the north part of Tokyo. Yeah, that's it. Sensoji, that's the front. So behind there is the big, long pedestrian way with markets and stuff. And then farther behind, like I said, is where the actual temple is. Awesome spot. It's usually just super busy with people.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Yeah, I bet it would be. What about you, Kyler? You got one in mind?
I think this might be kind of like not exactly what you're looking for, but I'll go for Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico. It's not like an urban space. It is the mountains. You go and you walk for a week and a half, and you backpack, and it's great. In terms of urban spaces, this one is. I'm absolutely fascinated by the old missing pedestrian mall in Tulsa that once existed, but I have no memory of it. But I've been to the spot where it once was, and I'm fascinated by it because if you look up Bartlett Square, it was these like tiered landscaped waterfall things. And today it's just a small roundabout. It's just a street. And so I'm fascinated by this place that I have been to, but it was once this really interesting thing and is no longer.
That's a good one. I'd love to see pictures of it. Like I love the pictures of old spaces. Is this it?
That is near the location of it. If you look up, did you look up Bartlett Square? Bartlett, I believe. There's like a couple of really good pictures of exactly, but you'll see like waterfalls. This is definitely going to be the topic of a future ERYNGO Urbanism video.
Oh, yes. I think we've got something, the past and future. Oh, yeah. I got to share this. This is so cool.
Yeah. Sorry if you're listening on Spotify.
I'll try to explain it here. So, yeah. Think of a, North American cityscape. And this is a GIF that's going back and forth. And at the intersection, tiered waterfall. But now
it's very 1970s. There's these crazy stepped retro futurist things. And Yeah, and like I was on a robotics team that met in the building right on that corner. Like I was
Wow.
here all the time, and what once was is no longer.
Travesty.
But
Yeah. Yeah, that is a travesty. For mine, I'm gonna say Stephen Avenue. I mean, it's Calgary, and that's our kind of pedestrianized space. But right on Stephen Avenue, you have City Hall. There's the train connection nearby. You've got old buildings. You've got a lot of restaurants, a lot of dining options, convention centers, Olympic Plaza. The Arts Commons is right there. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. That's a nice pedestrianized space here in Calgary. I'll pull up some pics for us.
another thing while you're pulling up those pictures, I gave a one in the past and one in the present, one in the future. In Oklahoma City, they're building a place called Plaza Calle dos Cinco. They're replacing a street in predominantly Hispanic neighborhood called Capitol Hill. They're changing one of the streets out and replacing it with a pedestrian plaza that they're planning on like hosting community events and doing a lot of like cultural things there. So I'm very excited in the future to see how that pedestrian space turns out.
Yeah, yeah, I'm stoked to see it as well, and I'm glad to hear that there are things happening. Yeah, so here's
That's
Stephen
nice.
Avenue. Um, so this is here in Calgary, and
Cool
it's just a
sculptural
it's nice
things there.
nice place. Yeah, there's some interesting artwork, and of course, like the plus 15 is that bridge, that pedestrian bridge at the end there. I also let me see if I can pull it up on Google Maps too, and give kind of a nice overview. Here we go.
Calgary has more pedestrian street than Vancouver. Remember that, people. This is what we're living with right now.
It's so funny. It's
This is
so
why you
funny.
should move to Calgary.
It's true. Move to
I
Calgary.
I
I'm
love
here,
a good
so
pedestrian street no matter where it is.
yeah, yeah.
Like I took the Amtrak down to Fort Worth. They've got a pedestrian street there in their downtown that it's got a big like mirror ball cowboy hat. It's
Oh,
like this is great.
yeah. I mean, why not, right?
Exactly.
You know what's crazy is that you don't even need to pedestrianize the street, right? As long as it's traffic calmed and you have tons of space for pedestrians, it can be a wonderful place.
Yeah, even
Yeah,
just
for
making the
sure.
sidewalks wider, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got, yeah, all of this is pedestrianized. And yeah, the Arts Commons, Olympic Plaza, which is being torn up as we speak, because this is getting a whole redo. And the Arts Commons is building another building that's going to go right in this corner here. So yeah, and there's the Glenbow Museum, there's Arts Commons. This is the municipal building and City Hall. It's kind of funny the size difference between City Hall and the municipal building. So City Hall and then the municipal building is like this big, massive thing.
Nice.
Yeah, and then of course you can walk right through the municipal building and visit the central library, which is beautiful, which we love. So I'm gonna say those are my favorites. And the train goes through
Oh,
the
perfect.
library. So I mean,
A
you know,
train through a library? You can't
that's
get much
pretty
better than
cool.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I'll say. That's what I'll say. Um yeah. How do you feel about this, Nick? How do you feel? Do you
What,
feel
the show?
do you feel good? Yeah, the show, the podcast.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Been
So
a
happy
good
to have
one.
Yeah.
Kyler on and talk about his channel and what he's been working on. I do have a question though, and it's about the professionalism that comes with having a job that's kind of related to urbanism. Is that something you worry about, becoming an architect, and how that might affect what you can say or do online?
That is an interesting moral dilemma that I have considered. I will say that the reason one of the reasons I started the channel is to potentially, get more of the kind of architecture work in the future that I like. So I mean, there is a a delicate balance to be achieved there. I've had people kind of deny interview requests because they're like, well, we don't want to really talk about this thing because it's ongoing, or that kind of thing, which is fair.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but I tend to be very sincere in my videos of like what I am doing and that kind of thing. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and some of it might be project by project, right? Like you might not necessarily be able to give comment on a project that you're working on or that a particular competitor or
Yeah, for sure.
whatever is working on. But, you talking about crosswalks and tactical urbanism and those sorts of things. Um, yeah, and I feel like it all also feeds into your experience as a human being and somebody who is working in that space. I imagine it'll inform a lot of the work that you do, and that the work that you do will also inform how you talk about the urban landscape. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm stoked. I'm stoked to see where you go. I have a few friends in architecture who are also really big into urbanism and value the impact that they can make
It
through their profession.
it's surprising how there are architects who are not, but there's also a large chunk that are. So it's
Yeah,
very, in terms of like when you start to talk about this stuff with architects, I mean, they'll get very technical, but it generally speaking, it's a very it's a good field.
yeah,
Mhm. I
yeah.
think, and that goes for any field in general, is the people who are into the thing that you're into. And in particular, this is like, I've got friends who are engineers here in Vancouver who work on the streets and are totally into this stuff. And they literally make bike lanes in the city. And I've got family members who are engineers who like don't even know the first thing about the things that we talk about. Like my
Yeah.
one relative who works and lives in London, Ontario, who works on the streets as an engineer, like this stuff doesn't even compute or even come close to the things he thinks about on a daily basis. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy to
Yeah.
see that dichotomy. But anyway,
Well, I think the profession will be better for having you, Kyler, and we certainly
One would
have
hope.
been better for having you. So why don't you tell us again? Tell us your channel name, where we can find you, anywhere else that we might want to search you up.
Yeah, so I mean, the number one place to find me is the ERYNGO Urbanism YouTube channel. That's ERYNGO. Uh, and then from there, we've got a Discord server. I've been trying my hand at some other social medias, but I'm not generally a very online like person in terms of like I never got into Twitter back in the day when it
Hmm.
still was okay. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it ever really was okay. But I've been trying my hand at some of the new apps, and I don't throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. But the YouTube channel is really the place where it's at for me. Um, so yeah, go
Yeah.
subscribe.
Yeah, and great. I can't wait to see what you do next. And we'll have those linked down in the show notes. Nick, where can the good people find you?
you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Nick the Door. My name is Nick Laporte. And Alex, how about you?
You can find me at Humane Cities on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else, including YouTube and Instagram, at Alex Williams YYC. This has been fantastic. Thanks, Kyler Smith, for joining us once again. This was a delight. Please come back.
Thank you for
And
having me.
with that, Nick, do you wanna say your thing?
Two wheels good.
And feet first.